This week we got the darkest episode of The Penguin yet, both in terms of acts of aggression and violence, but also in the arc of our two leading characters, Oz and Sofia. However, there is so much more to the artistry that is the production of this show, besides the top-notch acting and writing, which we will talk about, but also the manner in which certain technical decisions were made by the director and her crew. Helen Shaver, the director of this episode, used every tool in the box to build an episode that is arguably the most well-crafted so far. As we review this week's offering, I want you to pay attention to a few details. First and foremost, the use of different camera techniques depending on which character is on screen. As we view Sofia, a character who is at an important inflection point in her arc, she is in control. She is free, she is confident, she is determined, and although she is crazy, she is clear-minded in her goals and willing to take the necessary risks to attain those goals. Whenever she's on screen, our view of her is stable. That's because during her scenes, the production crew used dollies and camera tracks to reduce any shakiness within the shot. Juxtapose these with Oz's scenes, and we are mostly given handheld camera usage, which comes with those slight jitters and movements within the frame. It's never stable. It's very shaky. And as well and as successful as Sofia is doing being stable, Oz is the opposite. He's in a world of shit right now. He's at his lowest point in the series, and it only goes lower as we continue to watch. But there is a third main character that we must discuss here before getting into the plot, and I don't mean Victor or Oz's mom or Johnny Vitti or any other living person. But before we get to it, if you could take a moment to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video out, we really appreciate it. It helps out the channel each and every week. Now, the third character we must discuss is the city of Gotham itself. Now, we've been bounced around to a lot of different areas of this famed fictitious setting during our first 4 episodes, and certainly places like Arkham Asylum, the Iceberg Lounge, and the Falcone Mansion have played integral parts. It is in episode 5 where Gotham begins to become a narrative device, more so than it has ever before, especially for Oz, as the episode moves into its third act. So spoiler warning is in effect. Let's get into the plot and see exactly how dark our two main characters can turn. We open with a close-up shot of Oz's purple Maserati. It is practically totaled from when Vic used it to ram into some Maroni thugs at the end of episode 3 to save Oz from execution. Oz lights it on fire, and for Oz, this is significant. That car was part of his identity, a major representation of respect and status. After all, in multiple stories that Oz tells about the old days, even when he was a kid, the idea of your car that you drive is, like he says again here in this episode, is reminiscent of the regal chariots of Roman emperors and conquering warriors. For Oz to burn his car means that Oz is, personality-wise, beginning to see the need for some changes, as well as he's starting over from the bottom. Now pay attention, this is not the only time we're going to see fire in this episode. Even changing his clothes becomes significant. Our opening sequence is the last time we're going to see him in his formal white suit. He disregards that idea of appearing at a level of success that he no longer has. The rest of the time, he's dressed in a more blue-collar motif. And again, juxtapose this against what we'll see Sofia wearing. She's on top, and so she dresses that way too. We're seeing a subtle theme build here in class warfare. Vic and Oz have a real connective moment here. Vic pledges his loyalty to not only Oz, but stating that this is his one chance to do something to make it. And for Oz, this is one of the 3 or 4 relationships that he has that sustains him. Even though it's not always clear that he understands these relationships in a normal human emotion sense, the other 2 or 3 would be his mother and his somewhat girlfriend Eve, and to a certain extent still Sofia. Now a moment later, some low-level muscle arrives and Oz rallies them to his side. They need a plan. The Maroni family has stolen the new drug, Bliss, and the mushrooms, and he needs to get it back to start building his own empire. For Oz, the traditional rules are out the window. Much like the traditional institutions of Gotham no longer exist after the flood washed them away, so Oz sets his sights on the son of Sal Maroni. The foul-mouthed mobster's son is getting a tattoo and posting it live on TikTok. He makes it too easy for Oz as they rush the tattoo parlor, kill everyone inside, and kidnap the gangland scion. What's great about this sequence is the way that Vic lets out his viciousness. He's doing it because 1, he's committed to the mission, and 2, he's completely loyal to Oz. But yeah, Oz is going all in here, crossing a line that he cannot ever return from. And again, this idea of class warfare and breaking of traditional institutions, whether they're criminal or not, is going to be a major theme with not only Oz, but Sofia. They're going to kind of mirror each other as the episode continues. Oz then visits Sal Maroni and his wife Nadia at Blackgate Prison. He shows them a picture of their kidnapped son. Sal and Nadia are enraged that he would go after a family member because Oz is breaking an unwritten rule of the mob world. But Oz just snaps back, letting them know he's not a made man, therefore he doesn't care about those rules. He then suggests a swap, the son for the drugs, and the Maronis reluctantly agree. On his way out of Blackgate, Oz makes a deal with one of the guards and then sees on the television the aftermath of Sofia's mass murder of her own family. At the Falcone mansion, Sofia speaks with the police commissioner. Of course, she's feigning innocence and ignorance of the whereabouts of Johnny Vitti, the underboss, and here we get a sense that Sofia is also, like Oz, not going to follow the traditional rules of the mafia. The commissioner was in the pocket of Carmine Falcone. Sofia makes it clear that she's not available to be put in that same position, insults the commissioner, and then dismisses him. We next see Sofia walking through the Falcone cemetery to the Falcone crypt, where Johnny Vitti is being held, not just tied up, but restrained in a very painful way, and she has a bucket of water with her. She needs untraceable cash and wants Johnny to tell her where her father kept that stash. Johnny refuses. Sofia, someone very familiar with uncomfortable torture from her days in Arkham, pours cold water over him and waits for his body to go into hypothermia. As she waits, Oz is holed up at his one safe place in Gotham, Eve's apartment. And Eve is not happy with Taj Maroney being held there. She tells Oz that he has put her and her stable of girls in danger. Oz is able to placate her temporarily and then rallies his ragtag group for the exchange, but tells Vic that he needs him to look after his mother. For Oz, this is his Achilles heel, and Oz knows it. Vic complains because he wants to be with Oz, but Oz explains to Vic that his mother is what keeps him good. Does this mean Oz thinks he's a good person? Maybe. Oz only knows good and bad based on the world in which he grew up in. Or does good mean mentally focused and stable? If Oz is worried about his mother, he cannot conduct business with a clear head. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but it is very ambiguous by what Oz means by this. Now, at this point, we get the understanding that this is more than just a turf war or a mob fight. Oz and later Sofia will inspire their new families with talk about being left out, not made men, but laborers who made money for others. There is an explicit undertone of class warfare driving a lot of the violence we will witness. It's old school propaganda, but still some of the most effective. Back in the Falcone crypt, Sofia is lounging, smoking a cigarette as Johnny suffers from hypothermia. He talks to her about Isabella, her mother, his cousin, and displays real regrets for her death at the hands of Carmine. He begs Sofia to let him help her, give her credibility and respect. Sofia throws it back in his face. He remained underboss despite Isabella or Sofia's fates, but Sofia is calculating and completely detached from any emotion for her Falcone family. But she still temporarily capitulates to Johnny's pleas and offers, and this scene is so demonstrative of where Sofia's head is at. She is in the Falcone crypt. All the Falcones are dead. The family is dead. Sofia is looming over the last sliver of that crime family's legacy. She's almost quietly celebrating watching her father's empire wither away in the form of Johnny shrinking and shivering towards his own death. And Milioti plays it perfectly. Very understated, very direct. She seems almost untouchable at this point. We then see Vic keep his word to Oz. He enters Francis's home, but something is very wrong. The TV is on very loud. The stove is on and food is burning. The refrigerator is left open, and he finds Francis sitting in bed. And initially, she treats Victor as if he's Oz. He helps her up as she insults Oz and then lies to her about how Oz killed the Falcone family. Francis tells Victor that Oz is going to need her help. The significance is that wherever Oz is, or part of his central world is, like his mother's house, it's a mess. There's disorder and chaos everywhere. As opposed to Sofia, there's structure and order with her world. Even the image of the dead bodies in the beginning, lying on the front lawn, they're methodically spaced apart, all nice and neat. There's no clutter. There's no mess. Now back at Blackgate, we discover what Oz was paying the security guard for: to attack Sal in his cell, stabbing him through the stomach, attempting to kill him. At that time, Oz meets with Nadia to exchange Taj for the mushrooms. She is supposed to be accompanied by just one guard, which is what we initially see. Oz brings Taj out, bound and soaking wet, tape over his mouth. Oz's lone soldier checks on the mushrooms, then Oz will send Taj over to his mother, still tied up. At that moment, Maroni soldiers appear and begin shooting. Oz takes them out, but it's not over yet. Oz produces a lighter and ignites it. Taj is not covered in water. He's covered in flammable liquid, and Oz lights the trail he's left behind. Both Nadia and Taj burn to death as Oz looks on with the most morbid fascination. Now, Oz may have done some terrible things in his life before, but this act really shows just how far he's willing to go now for his goals. But like usual, Oz does not think through all the consequences of his actions. The fire suppression system activates and releases monoammonium phosphate, what those systems typically use. The powder rains down on the exposed mushrooms, and Oz panics as he and his men escape. Oz pulls over at a junkyard. He frantically inspects his cache of mushrooms and discovers that the powder has dried them all out. Almost the entire crop is ruined except for just 2 lone buckets. He realizes then his grand plan to become the underworld king is gone. His phone then rings. It's Sal Maroni. He has survived the attack and used the guard keys to escape. He tells Oz that he'll never be safe anywhere, that Oz is cooked. Oz's temper flares. He tells Sal, "Cooked? That's funny. Do me a favor, Sal. Call your wife. See if she answers. You stole from the wrong fucking guy." After hanging up, Oz's mind then goes to his Achilles heel. He calls Vic and tells him to get his mother out of the house, to hide her somewhere no one will think to look. While Oz is trying to salvage his life's ambitions, Sofia is home looking through her mother's clothing when Dr. Rush, her therapist, visits. For him, he desperately wants to be a part of her world. He's not only enamored with Sofia, but also with what Sofia has become, a true reversal. Rush enjoyed being in control of Sofia in Arkham. Now, Sofia controls him emotionally. And as the two come to terms, Sofia reveals the embroidered name of her mother inside a fur coat. Isabella Giangante. We next see Sofia wearing that same coat as she enters the conference room of the Falcone mansion filled with mob muscle and Johnny Vitti. She confesses to the murder of all the Falcone family members, that she was justified because of what those men did to her, and from this moment on the Falcone family no longer exists. She will be the head of the Giangante family in honor of her mother. And much like Oz, Sofia appeals to class warfare, telling the men at the table that they did all the labor, but the ones at the top got all the money, and she will do things differently and then dumps a pile of cash on the table. Johnny Vitti expresses concern and dissension. Sofia walks over to him, kisses him on the head, the kiss of death, and when he speaks again, she executes him in front of everyone. One of the unmade men then looks at Johnny Vitti's dead body and the pile of cash, and he asks permission to take some of that cash. And he even calls her Miss Giangante, and just like that, Sofia has her own family. And yes, I know I can hear a lot of the criticism over the patriarchy commentary, but like I've said in other videos about the show, this is how writing should work. There can absolutely be social messages in entertainment if done right. The Penguin uses these social messages as narrative devices. They are subtext, they are motivation. They are not there just to be there. If you want to know the difference, watch The Penguin, then watch an episode of Agatha All Along. You will see the difference between smart writing with a purpose and poor writing with the only purpose of an activist agenda. Okay, enough of that, back to the show. Vic brings Francis to the one part of Gotham no one would think to look, Crown Point. It was the poorest neighborhood in Gotham before the flood, it is the worst hit during the flood, it is the most neglected after the flood, a literal no man's land. And as Vic escorts Francis into a safe apartment, he's filled with fear and dread of Squid, the guy who runs the drop straight in that area and is the biggest gang leader in Crown Point. He successfully gets Francis into a now abandoned and neglected apartment. Again, Oz's world is filled with chaos, and this apartment reflects that. Francis remarks that it's just like the shithole she raised her sons in, and for Francis, this is the worst development possible. She has gone backwards in life. And as they settle in, Oz visits Eve. She tells him that they need to stop seeing each other. There is too much at stake for her own family, her working girls. Now, one of the few comforting relationships Oz has is gone. His anger takes the best of him. Things are being taken away from him. He's hitting rock bottom, the exact opposite of what he envisioned for himself. But Eve is right. He cannot become what he needs to become while worrying about her. And let's face it, Oz has a real problem relating to women. First, he screws up his relationship with Sofia on multiple occasions, now Eve, and soon he'll be faced with his ultimate emotional trauma, his mother. And while Oz's world falls apart piece by piece, Sal Maroni is mourning the loss of his wife and son. He's hiding in a cabin in the woods when gunshots are heard outside. His men have been killed, Sofia enters, and the two talk. Sofia declares the Falcone family dead and introduces herself and her new family name, Giangante. She has a moment with Sal and admits to him that his family had it right all along. It's okay to have emotional ties to each other, where her former family was incapable of doing so. She then offers to end the war between them and lets Sal know that they need to focus on the one person who's caused all of this misery and suffering in their lives, the Penguin. Now at that point, Oz finally makes it to Crown Point. Vic is asleep. Oz lies down next to his mother. He needs her approval right now more than anything. He is left with virtually nothing. But instead of getting what he needs, she insults him to his core, labels him a failed dreamer, just like his father, says he is punishing her by bringing her back to Crown Point, and then asks what kind of man cannot take care of his own mother. She then tells Oz to get off of her and to go away. Now Oz is truly devastated. He rifles through some of his old things from childhood, including a jar of coins. Inside is an old Gotham trolley token, and here is when the city becomes an integral part of Oz's story. He and Vic break into the abandoned trolley tunnels that run throughout the city. Oz knows them well from his childhood. He tells Vic all about his exploits with his brothers down there, and they come to a point where old generators are just lying around. Oz lights up the tunnel and asks Victor what grows in the damp dark, and Vic answers, mushrooms. Bingo. Oz tells Vic that this will be their new headquarters where they'll begin to grow their crops once again, where they'll never be found because Sofia and Sal always have their noses up. They'll never think to look down. It's a moment of inspiration and a moment of hope and possibility, and just when you think the episode will end on that high note for Oz, the generators give up and the lights go out. Still, we are left wondering about those possibilities. Thus ends episode 5 of The Penguin, an episode that sees us go to the lowest point of existence for the Penguin, the beginning of Sofia's conquering of the underworld, and the setup for the final act of the series that will play out over the next 3 weeks. It's just another piece of magnificent entertainment in every single way, and that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you rooting for Sofia? Or are you on Team Penguin? And where do you think Vic will end up by the time the season comes to a close? As well, if you want more movie and television show reviews, click on the thumbnails for my general movie review playlist and my retro movie review playlist. I thank you for watching. As always, remember I'm still your reluctant gringo from somewhere south of the border. Salud and a huevo.